Be strong.
Welcome to the Goal Line Stand, where we cover all college football news. Although the season just ended, there's plenty more to be excited about and plenty more content to come. Today we're talking about NIL. Now, a question is, what is NIL? NIL refers to the rights of college athletes to monetize and profit from their personal brands, and this being their name, image, and likeness. Since the creation of the NCAA, the corporation prohibited student athletes from earning anything beyond what their scholarships provide, this being money or other benefits. As a student athlete, you couldn't have a job or receive any type of monetary or non-monetary compensation, which is a big deal to these student athletes. The penalty for breaking those rules was losing your eligibility, which is your livelihood if you are a student athlete. NIL legislation passed at the state level this past year, and then later the NCAA just approved it nationwide that these college athletes can now monetize and make money off of their names. So I personally like that. I think long overdue, and it's just something that was brewing for a while in college football and just college sports in general. So the NCAA, they folded. They said, you know what, you can have your money, you can have your endorsements, you can have all these other things. And the athletes just went crazy. And most people either got into businesses, started doing cameos online, streaming, clothing brands, endorsements, etc. But there are some obvious downsides that I think need to be addressed. Little to no regulations with all this stuff. You see all these big-time programs being able to use money, being able to utilize their boosters' money to gain recruitments. But what happens to those smaller programs? What happens to those group of 5 programs? We saw this year Cincinnati sneak into the college football playoff. They deserve to be there, don't get me wrong. Undefeated. Luke Fickell he was an amazing coach this year. I think he's been an amazing coach for his entire career, and that's just something that we see from Cincinnati this past year. But what about those other group of 5s? What about the lower teams in big conferences like the Big Ten, SEC, Pac-12, ACC? Are those programs going to be affected by the NIL? And that's just something that we're kind of starting to see. It's just the tip of the iceberg so far this year of what we've seen of NIL, because it's so new to being introduced to the everyday lives of college athletes. Now, I think it's a great thing, but I think there needs to be more regulation on it. Because if we go back and look over here, I have some stats for us. Texas A&M, obviously they had the number 1 ranked recruiting class this year, topping last year's Alabama, but money is a huge factor in that. CBS reports that the Texas A&M boosters were giving away almost $30 million in profits of their own money to give to these recruits. I think they just really want to see a Texas A&M national championship, which has been long overdue. Not even in the past 40 years. I think it's before World War II. I might get corrected there. But I mean, it just poses some interesting questions. The rich get richer in this situation. You look at all the big time programs. You look at Georgia. You look at Alabama. You look at Ohio State. You look at all the big time programs you can think of. USC, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida. I'm probably forgetting a couple. Michigan. But they're big time programs, big time names. You just think of college football, it just springs in your head, some of those names. So those people, with their money that they have, they're going to get more recruits because, I mean, it's just security, People want to be financially secure. People want to be emotionally secure. People just want to feel secure in general. And I think that with financial, that takes away a lot of the stress that recruits have. That just takes away a lot of the stress of moving across the country if you know that you're going to be set up for a while. So I think it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, and it just needs to be addressed. I think I have a couple questions that I want to pose to you guys and also just answer for them for myself. And I think the main bad thing about this is that recruiting will now become a bidding war with money instead of just a bidding war in general, where you stand on the depth chart, what your coach is. So I think it's not a good thing. And I also think that the skill gap will widen. We've seen that in the past 5 years, teams dominating their conference. Clemson, it was an off year for them, but they won 5 straight ACC championships. I think Oklahoma, they had a quite dominant run. The SEC's been up and down, but it's always been either Alabama, Georgia, or LSU in the past 5 years. So you look at that stuff and you're like, with the addition of money into recruiting, does it widen that skill gap? And I think it unfortunately does. And that's not something that I want to see college football do, me personally. And I don't think this is a good thing for Group of 5 teams or even small schools. I want to give like a prime example. I think those teams that are sitting on the bubble of making a jump up into like the more competitive teams in their program. I'm going to say IU. I'm going to say Kentucky. There's plenty more. Pittsburgh. They're on the bubble of being competitive in the ACC. Pittsburgh are the reigning ACC champs. But I think it's just a step up that they're going to need to make with the boosters. And it's just a new addition to the whole recruiting process. So I think those are just a couple questions. And, I don't even know if you could be competitive if you don't have financial resources. So those are just some things to think about. And, it's just the tip of the iceberg so far until there is some sort of reform. But we all know the NCAA is not very good at reform. Speaking to the college football playoff, which definitely needs reform if it's up to me. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This has been the Goal Line Stand on YouTube. Stay tuned for more content coming.